Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Marilyn, and in today's video I'm gonna do a part 2 of what it's like living in Denmark as a black person. I do have my phone here, so I will be looking down on my phone a little bit because I want to make sure I answer all the questions that I received from my part 1 video in this video, of course. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, I would suggest watching that one first before watching this one. This video is more so gonna be me addressing some of the questions, comments, and concerns that I got in my previous video. The first one I wanted to address is speaking Danish aspect. So a few of you left a comment in my first video asking me to speak Danish so that you could guess, I guess, what city, or kind of guess my accent. So I'm gonna make sure to do that in this video. So I'm gonna do a quick introduction in Danish. Hej alle sammen, jeg hedder Marilyn, og jeg er 26 år gammel. Jeg bor her i USA. Jeg var faktisk opvokset i Danmark og boede i Danmark cirka 17 år. Jeg boede i Sønderborg, og så boede jeg også i Odense. Gik på Tænkerskolen, og jeg gik også på Nyborg Gymnasium, IB specifically. Det er det internationale gymnasium. Så hvis du gik på Nyborg Gymnasium IB, one love til alle, som er fra Nyborg Gymnasium. Elsker jer. Så den her video svarer nogle af spørgsmålene, som jeg fik i min første video. Hvis I har flere spørgsmål til mig, skriv dem i kommentarerne, så jeg kan svare på de spørgsmål i min næste video. So I'm gonna switch back to English real quick. Essentially, I just did a quick, brief introduction about myself in Danish, just kind of talking about where I lived, where I grew up, etc. And the rest of the video is primarily going to be in English, so I'm gonna go ahead and just get straight into this video. Okay, so the first comment that I see here says, fun to hear, I think it's okay. I used to live in Denmark. I used to think Denmark was boring, but after living in some other places, boring started to feel nice, and I came back. I definitely want to agree to this. Denmark can seem boring, especially for immigrants who come from countries that are very large in size, and also countries essentially that are very cultural. It can seem boring, but again, as this comment mentioned, boring sometimes starts to feel very nice after a while. You know, if you've been to certain parts of the world or lived in certain cities, especially here in the US, boring, the Danish boring actually starts to sound very, very good. I would agree with that 100%. And then this is a comment that says Denmark is a world-class country. The food, the shopping, the family over work lifestyle are all amazing attributes. I can't wait to return. Again, I do want to agree with this comment. It is a world-class country. Denmark is a very high-class country, as a matter of fact. It's in Scandinavia, which is like the bougie parts of Europe. Scandinavia, you've got Denmark, Sweden, Norway. I'm not really sure if Finland, etc. is part of Scandinavia, but those are the 3 ones that I can name at the top of my head. And essentially super high class. It's like way up there. Okay, very, very bougie. There's this comment from Caroline9565. She said, great video, please let us know how you feel about living in America with 3 Ks by mid-year 2025. Hopefully you can survive the chaos on the horizon. A good part about living in Denmark is you could travel to other exciting countries. And I do want to mention to this comment that definitely living here in the US is not a very straightforward path, especially if you are a black person, black girl like myself. But I will say that there are certain areas that you can live in and not have any issues. The United States is a very huge country. You have 50 states here, so you don't have to live in a place where you're not accepted or welcome. Denmark is a very small country. It's not like the US where you have such a large space geographically. So there are a lot of places you can live in the US. What is being portrayed in the news is usually always the bad parts. And I'm saying this because I used to live in Denmark. And when I lived in Denmark, I used to be so scared to move to the US. I used to think it was all school shootings and racism, which, I mean, those things do happen, but I've never witnessed that my entire time here. So it really depends on where you stay, the state that you're living in, the city that you're living in, the neighborhood that you live in. You have to take a lot of things into consideration. So I'll definitely say I'm having a great time over here. I'm having the best time over here. I actually have to admit that I'm loving it here in the US. And I will move on to the next comment. I did get a comment from Citizen Villa. He basically said, and I'm gonna say this in Danish because he commented this in Danish. So, tusind tak for lidt indsigt fra en udlandsdansker med stærke familierødder i Nigeria. Det er sjældent, jeg faktisk finder en flersproget person, der taler tysk, engelsk og udover dansk. Det var spændende at se, og jeg kan absolut ikke høre noget, der ligner dansk accent, som ellers er svært at komme af med. Så er fantastisk godt gået på det plan. Alt godt fremover, det er pludselig blevet enormt kantet at opleve, hvordan verden er stykket sammen, men du må have en noget mere hissig udgave af det hele, nu hvor du oplever det hele tæt på. Nå, men super fed video, og alt godt, som sagt, herfra. Foråret er lige om hjørnet, og du ved udmærket, hvordan det er her i lille Danmark. Mange hilsner fra Viborg. I'm gonna translate, do like a basic translation to English. Essentially, he's saying that it's nice to hear from someone from Nigeria or a Nigerian background who lived in Denmark, you know, getting their viewpoint on what Denmark is like. So essentially seeing Denmark from the lens of a Nigerian. He also mentioned that he's not able to hear a Danish accent as well. And also that now that I'm living here in the US, I'm seeing everything firsthand. So he could only imagine what it's like. And then a few other comments about, you know, the season changing to the fall season in Denmark, etc. So this was a very cute comment. I definitely love language. And that was one of the things that he had mentioned in the comments as well, that it's cool to hear from an immigrant, a Danish immigrant or an immigrant in Denmark, talking about what it's like, you know, learning different languages. I do speak German. I speak fluent Danish. Danish is the first language that I learned before English, by the way. So I also speak German. I wouldn't say fluently, but to a very good amount. I've always been very curious about language, honestly. I think the only languages I've really struggled with is Spanish and French. I did take Spanish in high school. When I was in Nyborg Gymnasium International Baccalaureate program, I actually was taking Spanish for 2 years, but I can't remember a single thing. I also took Latin, and I also don't remember anything in Latin. So we're not gonna talk about that. I do find German to be a very Germania, it's very close to English actually. A lot of the words are similar to English, and I find German honestly to be easier than Danish. But the main reason that I speak German is because at the time when I was living in Denmark, I lived in southern Denmark, which it's a city called Sønderborg, and in Sønderborg, the folkeskole that I went to, or which is like elementary school, essentially required us to speak English and German. Some of the teachers actually only spoke German, so even some of the signs too in the city were in German. So it was one of those things where it was highly recommended to learn to speak German, or to speak it to a very good extent. I can speak German. It's not too good anymore because I don't have anyone that I can speak German to here in the US. This is the little German that I do remember. Ich heiße Marilyn und ich bin 26 Jahre alt. Ich wohne hier im USA mit meiner Familie. Ich bin in Dänemark geboren. Ich habe Deutsch gelernt in der dänischen Schule. Folkeschule, I guess. That's like brief German. It's mostly the basics. I feel like I read it better than I speak it. I also understand it better than I speak it. My accent and the, you know, enunciations, it's not really there that much anymore because 𝐂𝐕h𝐿𝐶 gør mester. So if you're not practicing something for a very long time, eventually you're gonna forget. Okay, so apologize also. In this video, I'm gonna be switching back and forth between English and Danish. There's a lot of phrases that I know in Danish that's kind of hard for me to translate to English, so I will make sure I do my best to let you guys know what's actually going on. I did receive a few comments talking about why I'm so focused on being black and that Danish people don't look at skin color and it's more about who you are as a person. Those people who left that comment didn't understand the purpose of my video. So the purpose of my video essentially is to cover the experiences that I had as a Black individual. Not all immigrants face the same treatment. Black people have a totally different experience in every single country than every other race. And I do want to clarify this because unfortunately, if you aren't Black, you may not understand this and it just may not make that much sense to you. So because of that, I want to make sure that I address this. This video is specifically what it's like living in Denmark as a Black person, not what it's like living in Denmark in general, but I'm talking about my experience as a Black person. So I hope this makes sense to you guys. I'm seeing another comment that English and German have been mandatory in school since 1943, so all native Danish or Danes speak at least 3 languages, Danish included, which is actually correct. Most of the Danes that I know speak at least 2 languages. It may not be fluently entirely, but I mean, Danish for sure is fluent, but then the English is to a very good extent, I'd say. Beyond basics, beyond the introductionary and tourist level English. They actually speak English very well. My sister in 𝐅𝐀𝐕𝐎𝐑𝐈𝐓𝐄, when she was studying her science subjects, some of them were presented in English. That's another thing. You will actually see that some classes in Denmark, even though it is a completely Danish curriculum, they will actually have or present those classes in English, which is a very, very cool option. And it just shows you how international certain universities actually are. You won't experience this in like folkeskole or in the gymnasium, which is like the high schools, but this is more so university level, especially when you are closer towards Copenhagen. It's very common to speak English. And so I do see a comment here that says Denmark is not very diverse culturally. It can be a bit bland. I love mix of cultures and we don't have that as much in Denmark, which is very correct. Denmark is not a very diverse country, unfortunately, but I will say regardless of the lack of diversity, it's still a very welcoming country, surprisingly. So a lot of countries that aren't diverse, you know, you can go to certain countries in Asia, Middle East, they're not as welcoming, and they even have more Black people than Denmark. Denmark is a tiny little bit of a country, okay? Some of these countries in Asia and some of these countries in the Middle East have more Black people than Denmark has. And you find that Denmark is still a lot more open and a lot more welcoming to Black people. So that tells you a lot. Overall, it is a world-class country. It is a very welcoming and warm country, I'd say. But if you are a culture / food enthusiast, I wouldn't say it's the best place to be. I love food, I love cultures, and I just think the US offers more of that, especially if you go to New York City. I mean, New York City was the city that I first came to when I came to the US. New York is like a melting pot of every single country. I mean, everything is there. I would recommend. And then I see what's the social life in Denmark. A lot of people explain that it's hard to make friends. Do you agree? So when I was in Denmark, I went to school there, and you know, it's not really hard making friends in school. You see your classmates pretty much every day. I do have one of my close friends still that I still talk to till this day. Her name is Line. Lena, if you are watching this video, hey girl. So me and Lena, we went to Nyborg Gymnasium together, IB to be exact, which is the International Baccalaureate program. We used to love like speaking English, practicing our English, and I'd say that school was actually a lot more international than the rest of the schools. It wasn't hard making friends. I mean, you meet people if you have similar interests. We had very similar interests. I mean, she used to love Afro beats. I used to put her on to Nigerian food. I used to put her on to a lot of stuff. And I love when people are culturally accepting and also culturally open. I was open to, you know, I've always been open to a lot of the Danish cultures and things that they do, etc. And she was also open to the things that I do. But there's very specific Danish culture that I didn't necessarily grow up with, even though I did live in Denmark, but we just never did those things. Again, as a Nigerian, when you come to another country, you keep a lot of your own traditions and your own culture, but of course we do assimilate into the Danish culture as well. One of the things that was surprising to me, which I never participated in, is once you turn 25 in Denmark, they pour cinnamon, like kanel, on people. I'm not entirely sure what that tradition is about. I don't know what it's about. I don't know where it stems from. I just know it's something that's being done. So I remember when Nina turned 25, she was taking pictures of like people pouring ķehnīļ, cinnamon on her and everything, and I was so confused. I was like, what is going on? Like nobody ever told me this stuff, okay? So this entire time I've been living in this country, I never knew that people do this. I'm not familiar with any of this kind of stuff. So there are certain things, certain cultural norms for the Danes that as an immigrant you just don't participate in, unfortunately. So are there 𝐒𝐕 institutions in Denmark like university, theater, house, and so on? I have absolutely zero idea about this. The city where I lived in, we were the only blacks in that entire province. We were the only black people that lived there. Now living in the US sounds insane. But at the time when I lived in Denmark, I didn't realize my skin color. I felt so welcome that I didn't even realize I was black. When I came to the US, I knew, the first day I stepped here, I knew I was a black person. But sometimes in Denmark, I would forget that I'm black. I mean, it is important to know who you are, to know your roots, etc. I really didn't have any issue. I love Denmark a lot, thinking of moving in the country soon. Any advice on easy entrance visa tips? I'm not really familiar with the visa process and all of that stuff. I'm sure there are people in the comments that can answer that better than I can. So I'm not gonna touch on that because I don't want to confuse you and give you the wrong information, which is most likely what's gonna happen. What is the main official language in the society? So essentially the main official language in Denmark, I think it's Danish, but most people speak English as well, which is super cool. If you are a tourist traveling to Denmark, you really don't have to worry about communication that much. There is going to be somebody there who can help you. Regardless of your needs, someone is going to be there that can help you out. Then there's a comment that says, as a Dane, I really don't think you can put it like that. There's a very big difference being black in Denmark coming from Spain or the US and then being black coming as a migrant from Somalia. So this comment is one of the reasons why I made this video, because essentially what he's saying is there's a difference between black people coming from the US and black people coming from Somalia, but that wasn't what my video was about. I'm not coming from the US. I moved from Denmark to the US. I'm Nigerian, so essentially I would also be African, which is where Somalia is. Essentially what I'm understanding from the comment is that the black people coming from Somalia get different treatment in Denmark compared to black people coming from the US. It is true to some extent. Anybody who travels from the US to any country gets different treatment. I just think people do have this respect and they really value the American English. My video was about what it's like being a black person in Denmark, or my experience being a black person in Denmark. And that is a comment from Passport and Beer. I'm American, I see plenty black people. You'll find out white Americans will not say, but show the same things about being around people that look like them, just like you're saying. Just another story of majority, minority. I went to South Africa years ago and experienced for the first time what it felt like to be in a majority. It felt different and liberating. Then I realized this is how white Americans feel and explains their behavior. Literally, we're all the same. I don't accept a culture just because the people look like me. Again, when you live here in the US, and this is kind of drifting off of this video a little bit, but living in the US really did open my eyes to the fact that even amongst black people, it's not fully the same. There's black Americans, you've got black Africans, and there's definitely a difference. And I didn't realize this before. You know, sometimes you see somebody, you just think black is black, but it's not actually that straightforward, you know? So even though we're all black, we aren't all necessarily African American. And that's why sometimes they also have that option to just take off black. Why would I move to a freezing country that is cold 365 days a year? I mean, Denmark, it's cold, but it's not colder than Norway. I think Norway is definitely colder. And I'm sorry to throw Norway under the bus, but I gotta do what I gotta do, you know, I gotta protect my people. But Denmark is cold, but it's not that cold. I will definitely say if after living there for a while, you kind of adjust. It's the same thing like with the US or any other place you go to. Dude, no way you actually learned German from Danish public school. I lived in southern Denmark, Sønderborg, which actually required German to a large extent. Then there's a comment that's saying, vil gerne have hørt din accent, så jeg kunne prøve at gætte, hvor du voksede op. Det her er min accent. Jeg ved ikke, om jeg lyder som en, der voksede op i Sønderborg, eller som en, der voksede op i Odense. Jeg ved i hvert fald, at jeg har en fynsk accent, og ikke en sønderjysk accent. I don't think I have. Jeg synes ikke, jeg taler sønderjysk. Det her er min dansk accent. Igen, jeg taler faktisk dansk med mine forældre. Jeg taler også dansk med mine søskende, så jeg kan faktisk stadigvæk godt tale dansk. Jeg har også et par venner fra Danmark, som jeg stadigvæk taler til, så jeg kan også tale dansk til dem. Jeg har ikke nogen andre her i USA overhovedet, faktisk, som taler dansk. Sproget er et sprog, som jeg var født med, essentially. Så det er jo ikke noget, man sådan glemmer overnight, så jeg kan stadigvæk godt tale dansk. Til den person, der skrev den kommentar, yes, jeg kan tale dansk, og det her er min accent. And there's another comment that says, jeg vil gerne høre dansk. Du har hørt dansk hele videoen, so let me know if my accent sounds like sønderjysk or if it sounds like fynsk. Leave that in the comment section. I've actually always been curious to know this. All right, so now more of the organic talking and me kind of just looking into the video and giving you guys a little bit of a spiel on my overall experience. So again, I don't want to repeat what I mentioned and talked about in my previous video, but Denmark is a great country. It is a world-class country. It is a very bougie and a high-class country. It's located in Scandinavia, which is like the bougier parts of Europe, and the entire Europe even knows that. Like, if you tell any European country that you're from Denmark, they have great respect for you. They look up to you a lot, and that is kind of how Denmark is seen. At the time when I lived there, I did not experience any overt racism. It might have been covert, who knows? But I didn't experience any overt racism. I was a teenager at the time as well, so those were not really my areas of focus. I was more so focused on just making friends and being cool and popular and all that stuff. So overall, very, very great. There are a lot of benefits to living in Denmark. If you want to hear about the details, about the benefits and all of that stuff, make sure to go watch my part 1 video. I don't really want to cover those again in this video since I've already mentioned that. This video was more so to answer the comments that I received in my part 1. I really hope that you guys liked this video, and I love every single one of you. Please leave me a comment down below if you want to see more videos like this, or if you want to see me do vlogs when I'm actually speaking Danish, or more like videos where I'm involving you guys. Let me know in the comment section as well. I do really appreciate every single one of you. I also really love doing videos like this. Sit down videos are slowly becoming my favorite, and of course, as always, I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye.